Someone who maybe was highly productive at peak performance,
Yes.
then they go through a difficult transition,
Yes.
and they used to think they're the best at what they do. Now they think they are a failure. And during that process, their belief shifts into negativity. Their thoughts is negative, their emotions are negative, their behaviors corresponds to that automatically. Performance and the results follows that. Now they reinforce more of that. With time, it erodes who they were. Go into negative habitual behaviors that will be self-destructive. And all this is because you're trying to numb a feeling. The third alternative is stagnation, meaning depression, go into a depressed state. Or the fourth alternative is choosing to be victorious irrespective of the situation, and building enough staying power and belief you will overcome that situation. So your mind is standing at a crossroad, and it is just waiting for direction. And at that particular stage, you are very impressionable. And impressionable means when someone is going through a trauma, when someone is going through a difficult transition, they are very impressionable. Whatever enters their mind can be heavily influenced. And the reason is because you have the concept of the soul, which is the thoughts, feelings, and emotions. But the door to your soul is your will.
Okay.
So the word willing or willpower,
willpower,
that is the door. So what is the primary use of any door?
Let in
or to regulate,
or to close, or
yes,
to block, to let in or block.
Exactly.
Yes.
So when the door is not there and there are valuables behind,
there's no accessing the valuables because there's no door.
If the door is not there most of the time, it means there's nothing to regulate what walks in and walks out.
Yeah.
So when you are in this traumatic state, especially a GBV incident from a contingent transition or a relational transition, which is a divorce, it means the door to your wall is to your soul is compromised. You have no strength in your will, and whatever is impressed on your mind can be acted upon, even if it goes against your behavior, and that includes suicide. So being victorious is your mind is giving your mind an instruction to go back and seal and regulate the soul, and understand that you are going to transcend this. We might not have the answer at the present, but we will transcend it. Now, E is for empowered, meaning you do not have strength. Because remember the emotive stages, depression is one of them.
Yes.
At depressed state, it means you might not even have strength to come out of bed. So being empowered is understanding to find pillars and strengths in your life that can complement you during your downtime or time of need. And out of this, I'll use a concept which is famously used from a biblical context. There are three types of pillars you can have.
Okay.
Or there are three types of relationships you have. There's constituents, there's comrades, and there's confidants. So constituents are people who are in your life, they celebrate you for what you have. Once you lose it, they walk out.
They walk away.
Comrades are people who are in your life because you have a common enemy and none of you is stronger enough to fight independently that enemy. So you need each other. They need you to synergize with them. So they will be what you want them to be as long as they need you to synergize. But when you lose, when the enemy has been vanquished, they will turn on you or they might walk out on you. So they are there for who you are against.
Yes.
A constituent is there for what you have. But now a confidant is someone who is in your life for who you are. They want the best for you.
Yes.
They are effective of whether you're up or down. They are ready to hold you and navigate you. So when you're going through transition, part of building resilience in this formula, under E for empowered, is understanding that you do not have enough strength, find confidence to hold in place. And then the last one is being driven. And being driven means pursue something of significance based on the immersion you identified. Pursue something of significance. You'll find people who have gone through trauma, they've opened up foundations.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, life is about value. Our success lies on the other side of value. And value means your benefit divided by your cost.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, when you come into contact with the world, someone is acquiring some form of benefit from you. Simultaneously, they're incurring some level of cost. It could be money cost, time cost, energy cost, or psychological cost. So being driven means going back to the immersion stage and taking the meaning and translating it into some form of transformation process and impact for others. So part of building resilience, the first one, you look at
You find your staying power.
find your staying power. The second is go through the lived formula, and there's a book that I'm releasing to that effect. And just to close on this, the final is reframing. Reframing, cognitive reframing means re-establish your perspective. Re-establish your established way of thinking. Reformulate your established way of thinking. Because our brain already has a way it is used to process our thought process, and we always behave according to the perspective we hold.
Yes.
And the perspective is how we interpret ourselves, how we interpret the world, and how we interpret where we belong. So based on our perspective, there's a way of thinking. So it starts with our beliefs.
Yes.
So we have beliefs that forms our thoughts, and these thoughts will influence our emotions, which drives our actions. Our actions produce the results, and the results reinforce back the same thoughts. So this is the loop we are in already. So you can imagine if someone has gone through trauma, or someone has gone through a gender-based issue, or they are navigating a difficult transition.
They're consistently in a particular loop.
So if the belief is negative, what happens to the thought?
My thought is negative.
And what happens to emotions?
My emotion is negative.
What happens to the actions and behaviors you'll take?
I will take negative.
Which results will you produce?
Negative results.
And what will it reinforce in terms of your beliefs? Will it change them positively, or will it reinforce more of the negative beliefs?
It will reinforce more of the negative.
So that's called a cybernetic loop. So to build resilience is understanding how to reframe this.
Interesting.
So if you build new thoughts, what happens to, if you have new beliefs, what happens to your thoughts?
There are new thoughts.
Yes, what happens now to your emotions?
There are new emotions.
Actions?
Hopefully positive emotions.
Yes.
Positive actions.
And then results?
Positive results.
So what happens to your belief?
My belief is now positive.
It gets reinforced even more.
Yes. And
So-
now I've changed my loop.
You've changed your cybernetic loop.
Yes.
Because in cybernetic, the whole concept of cybernetic says there's a self-autocorrective mechanism inside all of us that will always recorrect and realign itself to the kind of belief we have.
Interesting. There's a self-autocorrective mechanism.
Autocorrective mechanism that is running subconsciously in all of us, and it will autocorrect us according to the belief we hold. So I might have been a very functional individual,
Yes.
then I go a relational transition, and I establish a belief that I'm a failure.
Wow. Yet you are.
I was a high flyer.
You are a high flyer.
Yes.
But because you went through this emotional trauma,
Yes.
relational trauma, you have created a new belief that you're a failure.
So the cybernetic loop changes.
Now bringing you into the failure type of loop.
So the autocorrective mechanism now will work with the new. It does not discriminate. And that is where self-sabotage comes in, because you find someone who maybe was highly productive at peak performance, then they go through a difficult transition,
Yes.
and they used to think they're the best at what they do. Now they think they are a failure. And during that process, their belief shifts into negativity, their thoughts is negative, their emotions are negative, their behaviors correspond to that automatically. Performance and the results follows that. Now they reinforce more of that. With time, it erodes who they were. So automatically this re-establishes what we call a self-concept. How they define themselves to themselves has totally been re-established, but from a positive to a negative side.
Yes.
And self-concept is an amalgamation of four things. It's their self-identity,
Yes.
how they describe themselves to themselves. It is their self-image, what they see when they look at themselves. In the mirror, for example, it's their self-image, the sense of embodiment in terms of their self-worth, and it is the ideal self, which is the future self you imagine as your best version. So when someone goes through this difficult transition and they don't know how to build resilience, they don't have the staying power, they don't have the lived formula, and they cannot reframe themselves, automatically they're operating with a corrupted self-concept.
Wow. So in operating and in operating with a corrupted self-concept, one of the things that has been coming up as you have this conversation, is it possible to escape the past? Our vision as a fund is a transformative fund for an empowered society. But then when we look at our society, when we look at the violence that is being meted, is it possible to escape the past and reinvent a great future? And how can someone go through that transition?
It is very much possible, because nothing is cast in stone.
Yes.
Everything, the one thing that gives the distinction between a human being and other animals is the power of creation.
Okay.
It is the power of creation. And this is goes back to the sense of philosophy that you're embodying.
Yes.
So one of the good sources of philosophy is spirituality. If you go to the book of Genesis, God says, let man have dominion
Yes.
over the earth. So at the authentic level, you're supposed to be dominating.
Okay.
If you go to the same Bible, it says, as a man thinketh so.
So he is
The same Bible, it talks about, according to your belief, it shall be done.
unto you.
If you go to Ephesians 3:20, the Bible says, now unto him who is able to give immeasurably, abundantly, exceeding above and beyond, according to the power that is at worketh where?
In him.
In him or within. So where is the power?
Within.
Yes, all those are evidential support
Okay.
that at the authentic level, you are able to transcend any situation you're facing. It is not an easy process, but it goes back to the concept of perspective. You will never act above your level of perception. So where does perspective come from? For you to transcend successfully is three-step formula. Number one, understanding how to escape the past.
Escape the past.
Number two, and it goes systematic. So once you've escaped the past,
How do I escape?
I'm going to showcase. So once you've escaped the past, you focus on the present.
Okay.
And once you focus on the present and you've escaped the past successfully, you now go to reinvent the future. So escaping the past, a human being will always operate at three domains.
Yes.
You have a past, a present, and a future.
Okay.
So a past are things that have already happened.
Yes.
A present are things that are happening.
Yes.
And future represent things that are yet to happen. So what are you supposed to do from your past? You learn from your experiences.
So from my past, I learn from
You
my
learn from your
experience.
experiences. What do you do with your present? You understand your reality as it is.
Okay.
And then what do you do with your future? You anticipate the future.
So with my present, I understand the reality.
Yes.
For the future, I anticipate.
You anticipate or you imagine it.
I
That's the
imagine
distinction
it.
between you and other creatures. You have the power of imagination.
Imagination.
You create through your imagination.
Okay.
There are two levels of creation. First in the mind, and whatever is thought and accepted and believed at the mental level, it goes into the physical creation. It goes into the physical creation. And if I was to give it from an esoteric perspective, this is evidence also in the Bible. It says, do not focus on the physical, for they are temporary. Focus on the spiritual, because they are permanent.
Yes.
Spiritual is hidden.
Yes, it is.
Temporary is visual. It is present. It is embodied in the physical reality. So how to transcend? Number one is understanding how to calibrate the three areas and align them. So escaping the past simply means looking at the external environment and then looking at the internal environment and then building knowledge from a strategic standpoint.
Yes.
So if you look at external environment, you will see what is happening around you. Internal environment, you will see who you are within. And then building knowledge, you will come out with a three-step formula,
Yes.
KQS.
KQS.
Yes.
What does that stand for?
You will learn, number one, what to keep
What to keep?
that worked in the past, right? What to quit
Okay. What to quit?
that you've been doing that is not working, and what you've been neglecting. You need to start.
Okay, start. I was wondering, and
Yes. So
Yes.
from your past, you're going to understand what we call errors. There's errors of omission.
yes.
There's errors of commission. There's error of procedure. And there's error of serendipity.
Okay.
So error of commission means things that we've been doing the wrong way that are creating patterns, looping patterns in our life.
Yes.
Errors of omission are things that we are supposed to be doing that we've not been doing, and it's creating the butterfly effect
Yes.
negatively in our lives. And as long as we don't do them, correspondingly going forward, we are still going to face the same situation. Errors of procedure, it means we might be doing something but in the wrong manner. We are doing them in the wrong way, it's producing the wrong results, but we are acting. And that's the essence, where just because there's movement, it doesn't mean there's progress.
Indeed.
And then errors of serendipity are accidental happenstance. Things that were unexpected, contingent, that happened in our lives from our past, that created a heightened experience emotionally, that affect who we are in terms of the perception. So when you look at your past, you're supposed to learn from the experiences
Yes.
and live the experience. You can't drive ahead using the rear view mirror. And part of it is looking at the errors
Yes.
procedurally, commission, omission, or serendipity, and then establishing what you need to keep, what you need to quit, what you need to start. So that means you've escaped the past. When you understand your KQS, you take that and you bring it to your present.
Okay.
So in your present reality, you're supposed to create an aspired future through your imagination. Now that becomes the vision.
Yes.
The Bible says where there's no vision, people perish. Vision is created in the present with an anticipation of realization in the future.
Yes.
A vision is never created in the future. In strategic balance, a vision means a description of something in the future.
Yes.
It is when you sit in the present and you describe something in the future. That is a vision. So that's what you do with your present. Understanding your present reality, it is taking the strategic knowledge of the past, which is the KQS, and then making strategic predictions. If I was to keep on this path, what is the anticipated outcome? Steve Jobs put it, you can only connect the dot looking backwards. So anytime we look backwards, we will identify patterns. And where there are patterns, you will know the trends.
Yes.
Or expected trends. So navigating this transition is understanding how to escape the past, focusing on the present, and then reinventing the future. Now, focusing on the present is bringing the future and the present through your imagination by having a clear vision of what you're trying to achieve. And then now, when you're reinventing the future, is taking that vision, smarten it up, break it into micro tasks, and commit yourself to pursuing those tasks, and every day becoming a better version of yourself, irrespective of the type of transition you're going through. So if you are pursuing intermittently those tasks progressively, you're becoming a 1% better of yourself from a compounding process. You're already reinventing your future in the present. Yes.
And in reinventing the future and reinventing a personal future as we are navigating through this difficult transition, and especially when we look at escaping the past and really start doing the things that we had ignored, I would like you to put your business architect hat. Our mission as National Government Affirmative Action is actually to facilitate social economic empowerment. And this we do through economic empowerment of women groups, youth groups, people with disability. I would like you to put on your business architects and bring about how can we really accelerate the social economic empowerment from a business perspective, from a business architect perspective, and maybe some of the examples that you've actually worked very closely, even maybe with survivors of GBV.
Yeah. Now, if you're to look from a business perspective, business is about creating value for a profit, and profit in this case it's in quotes. If it is an organization that is transformative, it's mission oriented.
Yes.
If it is an organization that is profitable or it's looking at competitiveness in the marketplace, it's profit oriented.
Yes.
Now, if you're pushing an affirmative action, at the end of the day, the sound fundamental business principles can be applied. Like you look at the modeling aspect of your approach, who is the target audience? So if you're talking about youth, if you're talking about persons with disability, if you're talking about women, this we cluster them under segmentation, different segments of the fund. Now, in each of these segments, once you understand the segment, is looking at the value proposition within that particular segment. Now, there's what you call the pain, the gain principle. Each of that segment you're focusing on has a particular pain that they are going through. And when you're focusing on that particular pain, the question is, how do you align your efforts as the fund to that particular audience, to the core pain that they are facing? And then now you're structuring projects around those particular pain points. For example, if it is the youth are going through different challenges.
Yes.
Unemployment is one of them as a pain.
Yeah.
If you look at education, access to education,
Yes.
is another pain. Positioning themselves in the marketplace in terms of skills matching, that's another pain. So there are a multitude of pain within that particular audience. So as a fund, the idea is to pick one particular audience, segment them off the other, and in that particular audience, understand the pain point that is core and aligned to your mission and supportive partners, and then customizing real solutions to addressing that particular issue. For example, when it comes to youth and unemployment, unemployment is a systemic issue.
It is.
And they say a systemic issue, it means something that has been perpetuated over a period of years and time, because there is no successful mitigation that has been rendered. The only way to deal with a systemic issue, it has to be creating a systemic solution. So part of systemic solution is embedding the beneficiary as part of the solution. So in other words, for there to be enough jobs, if you look at the percentages of youth who are transitioning actively into the job marketplace, according to statistics, as I looked at them before, it is about 800,000 youth annually who are influxing the job market.
Yes.
Now, perpetually, there's already, in retrospect, there's already a big gap in terms of those who have been absorbed. So this is a problem that is piling, that is piling, that is piling. Now, to address this issue from a systemic perspective, in systems thinking, there's a model called the iceberg model of systems thinking.
Yes.
Now, you look at an issue as an iceberg, it means the rule of an iceberg, only 10% is visible. But the larger part of the iceberg lies below the surface, which is 90%. So at the top of the iceberg are the events and the patterns, and at the bottom of the icebergs, below it, there are two things. There's systems and the structures, and below the system and structures is the mental model. At the base of the iceberg, it is the mental model. So this is what it means. The kind of events and patterns that are visible at the level, at the surface level, for example, unemployment, they cannot be addressed at that level. They are just a projection of what is happening. But for those events and patterns to be taking place at that surface level, it means there are systems and structures holding them in place to create that unemployment, and there is an established cognitive framework which is collectively embedded as our mental model. So to address, using this model to address any systemic challenge, for you to change the events and the patterns, you have to dive deep at the surface level and reframe the way of thinking. And then come up, and once you reframe the way of thinking, automatically it will dismantle the current systems and structures and create room for new ones. And when those two are shifted at the below surface level, automatically what lies above will shift. So this practically, this is what it means. Part of what I think to create a systemic solution to address unemployment is shifting the narrative from job creation to job seeking to job creation. It's changing the perspectives and the mindsets of the young people to become job creators instead of just focusing on job searching. If that mental model is collectively embraced and embodied as a culture, it means there'll be education innovation. There's curriculum revision to focus on skills and less of certification. There'll be other forms of dispensation in terms of skills building, capacity building. Entrepreneurship will be mainstreamed, such that for those who want to pursue a career in entrepreneurship, so and having a background in higher education, it is something that can be systematically changed, and that's part of some of the things that you need to address. And I'm glad you have the INIT program, which is part of our collaborative efforts to see how we can contribute to the systemic issue.
Yes. And yes, apart from being a collaborator, I want to say thank you so much for coming today at the Affirmative Action Table. Number one, as an executive coach, where can people find you? As a life architect, where can people find you? As a business architect, where can people find you? But even as you give us the direction of where people can find you, what would be your final words in order to accelerate this mission that NGAF is doing, especially opening up a table of conversation where we are welcoming people to the table to address key issues that are affecting us, and especially for the 16 days of activism to end GBV.
Okay, thank you very much. Where people can find me, just go to my website, which is www.bobkalili.com. You'll get to understand who I am extensively, and the kind of solutions that I drive in the marketplace, and how to get in contact with me. My phone number and everything is there. I'm also the co-founder of CEO Academy Africa, which is an executive coaching firm, and we also dabble in leadership development. You can also find more details about what I do. It's called the CEO Academy Africa. That is www.ceoacademyafrica. And those are the two predominant places you can find me. Now, in terms of accelerating your mission, my closing point is this: you have to find a way to synergize between all the stakeholders. You have the survivors of the issue. At the same time, you are having the benefactors, people who are complementing your activity. And then at the same time, you are having thought leaders, people who have extensive, wide knowledge on a multitude of aspects that are affecting the GBV. So if all these are congregated into a community or a supportive kind of led by the fund, the survivors will be able to access quality information. Because again, I'm very philosophical in terms of where I borrow my knowledge. I'll close by saying, if you go to Hosea 4:6, it says, "My people get destroyed for lack of knowledge."
Yes.
And because you've rejected knowledge, I reject you as a priest. And because you also reject knowledge, I reject your children. So basically what that means, when we remove religion, knowledge is wisdom.
Yes.
It is the ability to get information in your head, understanding in your heart, and application in your hands. So if you have the right wisdom, you are allowed as a priest. Priest means any form of leadership or influence, either mission or profitable. And then when you're saying rejection of the children part, means if you are qualifying as a priest, you have enough wisdom to pass to others. But if you do not qualify as a priest, it means you have ignorance, and the only thing you can transfer is ignorance. So in this case, when you have survivors who can access quality wisdom from thought leaders, and then that process is complemented by stakeholders who are funding partners in the process, and this is embodied into a program, it will be very impactful. For example, having someone like me coming in, I could be having something of value that I might speak on, that will give someone somewhere some understanding on what they're struggling with, and that will help them to recalibrate themselves from self-sabotage to self-reinvention. And if this is fronted as a program, it indemnifies from associated costs, because now this could be more of a stewardship kind of activity. So that's just my perspective. It has to, again, to take a very, very innovative approach, but I thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much. Navigating difficult transitions from self-sabotage to self-stewardship. Thank you so much, Mr. Bob Kalili.
So thank you for having me.